All right. Hi, everyone. It's Jennifer Britton. We are going to get started with our March 4th, 2025 call. We've got a bunch of people in the waiting room, so I am going to let them in. We may have more of you joining us virtually rather than physically. Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Good to see you. How's everyone doing on March the 4th? Good to see you. We've got Hoda, we've got Shannon, we've got Jane, we've got Ivana. Hello to all of you. Good to see you. Happy Tuesday. It's just about 1 o'clock, or no, not 1 o'clock. It's only 12 o'clock here in north of Toronto, Canada. Good to see all of you, whether you're joining us live, whether you're joining us virtually. I am recording the call because we know that there's a lot of hot topics happening around the world right now. So just thank you for taking time, whether you're here virtually or physically. We are getting back to our Tuesday calls, which we love to do. And some of you are alumni, some of you are in our web. I really appreciate wherever you're coming in from today. And so to bring you into the room, I want to roll the dice. I'm going to grab the Reconnecting Workspaces dice. This is something I've been doing a lot around, not just in the last few months, but for the last 3 years and prototyping these with groups and teams, seeing the sort of the spark that gets created when we roll the dice. So I'm going to roll three of our dice. This is the yellow set. And the words that are coming up today, and you can just make a note what is important to you and how this might connect. The first one is DNA. DNA. Maybe you're thinking about the DNA of your conversations. Maybe you're thinking about the DNA of your organization, of your culture, whatever is important for you. We also had a second dice coming up, which is actually one of our 2024 and 2025 themes, which is experimentation. It's interesting how this dice often emerges. And as someone who's coming to the call, just curious, I want to give you a moment to reflect on how might experimentation be showing up in your work. And the final one out of the yellow set is time zones, working across time zones. And what I love about our community is we are a global community, people from all over the world. Even on this call, looking at all of you, we've got people from the west side of North America, the east side. We've got people from Europe as well on our call. So wherever you're coming in from today, welcome. I'd love for you to just share in the chat what is important about these three words for your work right now, whether it's DNA, whether it's experimentation, or whether it's working across time zones. What is important for you? If you feel open to sharing, just pop that in chat. Also, would love to get some voices in the room. So if you feel like you want to speak, put up your hand virtually or physically, because we're going to talk today about group and team coaching, which is not about using the chat. It's about dialogue. So, what's important today as you think about DNA, experimentation, and also working across time zones? And welcome to those that are just joining us. We're just getting started on our first of 5 calls that are going to run from now until the end of May. These are going to be roughly bi-weekly calls. I'll share the schedule actually while people are just typing in. We really felt, and we being Ivana and I here at Potentials Realized, felt that it was time to dig into some of the key themes that are emerging. Some pretty rapidly, some have been something we've been talking about for years now. And if you haven't met us before, I founded Potentials Realized back in April of 2004, so almost 21 years ago now. And we have been looking at how do you scale the coaching conversation to have the most important conversations for the moment in a world of change, whether the change has because we've all gone virtual, or whether because we've gone hybrid, or whether we are looking at how do we really deepen connection across boundaries and borders. And so, with that, let us see what you're thinking about as we get into today's topic. So, Joe, good to have you here. Joe's really been thinking about how to experiment more with my marketing. Not sure I'm thinking about time zones, though. I wake up in the morning and I think time zones, and it's been part of my DNA. As some of you know, I spent my first 15 years of my work working globally It was so amazing a few weeks ago to get back to Barbados, one of my duty stations for many years. Actually, I got to spend time with my former assistant, and we really, it was just an opportunity to connect with folks who are very meaningful for me. And I think what I love about our work is we can connect by phone. We don't always have to travel. So with that, let's bring Jane's voice in with NA moving into DLS this upcoming week and North America moving to daylight savings time. I think I got those acronyms right. This upcoming week, my meetings with time zones have to change, either forward or backwards. So all about change. Yeah, and that I'm always very conscious of as we move into daylight savings time. The insurance companies here always talk about how the day after, the Monday after daylight savings time, statistically has one of the highest accident rates. And actually, someone in my family one year got into an accident on the Monday after daylight savings time. It wasn't that bad, but there really is this notion of like you have let our sleep cycle is disrupted. So we know how important sleep is and being on prime, which is what we want to hold the space for in our work. So I also want to point to Shannon's comment. Thanks, Shannon, for dropping in here as well. Thinking about how you stay true to your DNA, your program DNA. Yes, in a changing environment, lends itself to experimentation while serving clients from US West Coast to India. Absolutely. And I know for many of you, you work across not only time zone boundaries, but geographic and cultural boundaries. And that will continue to be a significant focus for us here at Potentials Realized. We are a global organization. We've got Ivana, a Canadian sitting in Italy. I think I really take pride that our models as well really are speaking to and continue to speak to coaches all over the world because I think many of these topics are top of mind. The conversations may sound a little different in different rooms all around the globe. And that is the beauty of what we do and what we hold the space for. So this is our hot topic focus. I hope that you'll join us. Do take note that after today, we'll be back 2 weeks from now. Our calls will roughly be 30 minutes in length. I know one of my invites said 45 minutes. We just put that there in case you want a little bit of extra time as well to catch your breath. Because I think in all of the things that are happening right now, there are so many layers to our work. There are so many sort of things that are weighing on our minds and our souls and our hearts. And so having a few extra minutes is not a bad thing, I think. So we're going to look at connection next week or 2 weeks from now. I'm going to introduce the 5 areas: connection, engagement, experiences, AI, and change. And you can also think about what hot topics are showing up in your room. So hi to Stephanie Burke. I haven't seen Steph in a few calls. Good to see you. Steph is always here. And, I think we really are. We're going to dive first off into change because we are in moments of radical change. And some of you know that I've been working on a manuscript in the little windows of my world that I have time for 18 months now. I started writing the book in 2003, November. It was on pause last year as I spent a lot of time in my dad's journey towards end of life. And then was able to pick it up again in November. And it's sort of interesting as I look at that sort of 18-month process and where we are in the world right now. We are in moments of radical change, right? Some days we may feel it. I think certainly our clients are feeling it. Feelings of discombobulation. If you've never heard that term, that was a term we used a lot in crisis management when I was working with countries to rebuild past post-natural disaster. Discombobulation means things are like up in all ends, right? It may feel like what is happening today because it's very different than yesterday. We are also seeing things like disconnection and people feeling that there's disorder. And these are the spaces that we want to hold space for, right? As coaches, I think it's even more important now to have that neutral stance, to really be working to our best ability to hold the space for the conversations of our clients. It's not about us, it's about our clients. And that may mean more self-management. It may also mean really looking after yourself and sort of, ensuring that you are spending time to get those, as we call it in the dice, that actually use the release valves so that you're able to also let go of some of the weight of the world and our coaching conversations right now. A lot of discussion, and this even came into one of our meetings earlier this week. Like, are we living in the era of VUCA? Are we living in the era of BANI, right? VUCA, of course, being volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. But in BANI, it's a world of brittleness, right? It's a world of incomprehension. And I think if we look at current events, for some folks, this is like, wow. I have to say, for me, as someone who worked on a global stage for many, many years, nothing surprises me. And at the same token, I think it's important that we make sure people are equipped for whatever conversations, whatever decisions they need to be making. We are really in an era of the chaos that I spoke to in my TED Talk of 2002. And if you haven't watched that, it's one of my grad supervisors before I started my career and my first international work assignment at the age of 22, I think I was. I said to one of my mentors who had worked extensively globally in the 1980s through a lot of economic transitions throughout Latin and Central America, where, especially for women's rights, there was a lot of change happening in those arenas. And I, as a young female leader, I really was looking up to my supervisor because I wanted to know how could she show up in conversations that in countries and in places that were not her own, but work to affect change. And her message to me, which I incorporated in that TED talk, was embrace the chaos. And that really continues to be a bit of a navigation point for me, regardless of what is happening in all worlds, whether it's the external world, the internal world. How do we embrace all the change that may be feeling quite dramatic? And I think that is inviting us to really look at how do we build adaptive leadership capabilities. Many of you probably have studied this. Certainly our last call, and I think Jane and Ivana, you were with us. We talked a lot about this bridge between adaptive leadership and then using more creative approaches to really be helping people start to articulate and or explore what is happening and how they're seeing the world, how they're seeing their role in the world, and how they're seeing themselves. And so we're going to not talk so much today about the experiential tools. Some of you were with me in Barbados virtually a couple weeks ago, and we're bringing back the Coaching and Change workshop. I'm going to be doing it again for an encore presentation on March 20th. It's a half-day workshop that will run virtually from 1 to 4 p.m. And we're going to be going into this whole toolkit, again, pretty high level because it's just a 3-hour program, but be getting you to think about what does coaching and change look like? How do you boost memorability? How do you support engagement? And I hope that you'll consider joining us for that because it is about making the coaching stickier. That's why I came to coaching 24 years ago as a younger leader. I was much younger 24 years ago, but as a leader with these teams that were spreading across countries, my question always was, how do I help my team? How do I help my team get the traction that they need in times of complex change and uncertainty? We in the former world of work probably were the ones that were like seeing the types of changes that we're seeing now every day. The world is exposed to a lot of these changes. So that has influenced my work. It's influenced my leadership and really what we talked about and we'll be talking about again March 20th, which is a Thursday, not a Tuesday, engagement, memorability, and change. And so here's a bit of a framework that I'm building out again, using with a lot of the leaders that I've worked with over not just the last few years, but this comes out of very much, the 1990s, 2000s, 2010s, and now 2020s. But how do we activate all of these? And I'll start at the top, just because I want you to think about where are your conversations taking you in the coaching room, whether it's individual, whether it's group, whether it's team. And one of the main ones in the adaptive leadership realm is like harnessing the collective capability, right? We do know, especially in a team effectiveness realm, that power of diverse ideas, of diverse skills, of diverse mindsets actually allows us to create better solutions in times of complex change. It does have the flip side that it takes longer. People can get trapped in trying to like decide, and in a speedy movement arena, you know, there is a trade-off. Do we go for the collective and collaborative solution, or do we have individualistic focus? And that may be something that you're talking about in your rooms. Certainly, recent events have shown we've always got to be learning. One of the themes we'll look at later this spring is AI. And I want you to just share with us in chat, like, how is AI impacting your conversations right now? How is it influencing the world of your clients or the world of your business? Even current events aside, like AI is dramatically changing the world of work. And so we need to be always learning. And you might want to listen in to, I think it's episode 19. I'm looking at Ivana here. Episode 19, or maybe one that's just about to come out. We talk a lot about the skills needed for 2030. And that is based on some research that was done in the World Economic Forum. And it's really pointing to the need for all of us at all stages of our career and all industries to always be learning and embrace the chaos, as I've shared. So as we go through these, what I'd love for you to do to bring you in is to have you share with us, maybe with a stamp or maybe a check mark, like what is the skill set that you are finding is a conversation in your rooms? Which of these is sort of focusing? And I'll just bring in Stephanie's comment. AI has taken career coaching to a whole new level. Do you want to say something on that stuff? Because I think this is interesting given where coaching is getting activated right now with so much churn in market spaces, whether it's AI, whether now we have tariffs on the not on the horizon anymore, but on the plate. A lot of changes are happening in the workspace. So what are you seeing as a career coach with AI, Steph?
So AI and Chat GPT in particular, because that's the my tool of choice, it's enabled me to actually better serve my clients because now I find, not only am I giving them advice, I'm teaching them how to use Chat GPT themselves to compare their resume to the job ad, have it tell them what they're missing, help them, we brainstorm together based. So chat has like become another person in the room.
It's an
Um,
appendage. It's another set of brain and fingers.
yeah. And then, LinkedIn uses AI for candidates when they're applying to jobs. It's helping them by giving them recommendations for jobs to apply to, and it's telling recruiters which candidates are particularly a match for the roles that they've posted. So it's become, another person in that room,
Wow.
and it's really been a game changer. I think candidates who are in job search who don't use Chat GPT are going to begin to look like their resumes are less qualitative than the ones who are using it to help them elevate their language.
Brilliant. And we've got Shannon also saying, thanks so much, Steph, how AI is expanding her toolkit for designing sessions and creative solutions for working with clients. And Joe asked, I'd be curious what prompts you have to help you. And so Shannon's saying, I'm happy to pull a couple together and she's going to share it with us and then we'll share with the group, or you can share your email. One other resource, I mentioned this last time, I just did a giveaway in February. It's called the Heart of Coaching giveaway. Do it every year. And in this year's Ignite resource, so it's a 25 page resource for group and team coaches that you can access. And I'll get us to send out the link, but it's got a whole page on AI prompts for programming, also AI prompts for you in terms of your marketing, because I think for many of us, we're solopreneurs or small teams. So how do we harness that capability? Many of you have joined me in other programs around content creation, right? Twice a year, I do content sprints, half a day. And it's been really amazing to see how when we put AI with that, you can really leave a 3 hour content planning session with months, if not the whole year of content, not only like drafted in terms of ideas, but like graphics done. So we do want to look at how we can harness that. And because when a world is changing so fast, we want to be focusing on the strategic issues, allowing ourselves to discern what is important and not be so in the weeds. So thanks for all that input. Again, a few more things with adaptive leadership. And I know many of you are working in this arena, harnessing the diversity that exists, really helping people like that spiral lighthouse coach approach in gaining new perspectives, whether they're on the balcony at the 30,000-foot view. So much of the work too is about empowerment and capacity development, as I would talk about it in my line of work. And it is an interesting arena. Like, how are we giving people at all levels in an organization the tools to do their work? Now, that is playing out in different industries, in different size organizations, in many, many different ways. But I think we certainly are seeing challenges arising for leadership today. Like end of last year, there was a lot of middle manager cut. Maybe that will happen again. We don't know. But how are we fostering that collective learning for people at all levels and fostering that constructive interaction where discourse is important because we know that through dialogue, we often get to better solutions and are able to make the connection to systems as well. Two other words that I'll get to before Jane's question of discernment, because I think we could do a whole call on discernment, Jane. Happy to do that maybe later in this year. But two other pieces, and we spoke a little bit last year on intentionality. We actually did one of our Coaching Many podcast episodes, I think number 9, if memory serves me correct, on intentionality. Working with our clients around intentions and what they're aiming towards has always been a key part of coaching. And so that might be something you're revisiting right now with clients. Intentionality and bigger picture vision. Now, there is some debate around should we be talking about vision in times of disruption? I think, if anything, vision is even more important and helping people get anchored into their why, into the bigger picture. As I found myself saying 5 years ago this month, and it's hard to believe that it's been 5 years to the start of the pandemic for most of us around the world. But in March of 2020, I was saying, one of the best things we can be doing as coaches, as leaders, as organizations is helping people connect with the bigger vision. When times of disruption happen, it can feel like whiplash if we're just looking at what is in front of us. But if we can take our view out to the horizon and really keep, values, vision, all of those sort of more foundational elements in mind, it can help us flow through the choppy waves or what might feel like choppy waves. And that, Jane, also helps us with discernment, right? We want to be really helping, I think, in the coaching conversation with teams and groups and leaders, and probably a lot more people, like I'm having it with business owners, is what is important right now? How do we prioritize? And I'm just about to finish an article that will go up on LinkedIn in the next week or two. And I'm pulling from a piece of Plan, Do, Track Coaching Business Builder. So if you go to section 4 of Plan, Do, Track and Coaching Business Builder, you'll see the prioritization matrix, which is a really important tool for change, where we can start to individually or collectively start to identify those elements that are going to move the needle with either high impact or high likelihood to have impact. I think what is a big challenge right now is having so many options. How do we start to sort what those options are? So in the coaching and change workshop in a few weeks, we're going to get more into tools. And that coaching and change workshop is actually one of a quarterly series that I'm going to be doing in 2025. So I'll talk more about that, but just know that these are going to be 3-hour workshops once a quarter to help us really build the toolkit because we're facing immense odds, right? Here's what Gallup came out with a few weeks ago. US employee engagement sinks to a 10-year low, right? Based on their research, based on their data, right? It's interesting. If you look at engagement, it actually went up during the pandemic and now it's dropped again. It's over a 10-year period at its lowest, but it has not dropped as low as 2004. So just notice that. And really, engagement is key, right? And if we're moving to an environment where we want to be more team-based, if people are having to work across differences and borders, having that engagement is important. The other piece that I want to point to today is paradigm shifts. And I think just like we saw 5 years ago, there may be, and that's a maybe, elements where we are starting to see different paradigms emerge in different arenas, whether that's in organizations, in ways of working, in terms of leadership. And so I just want to leave this piece with you because it fits under this whole notion of change, of engagement. What are the paradigms we are standing in? What are the paradigms we're helping our clients straddle? What are the paradigms clients might have already moved to? And a paradigm, of course, is a distinct set of concepts, thought patterns, including theories, research methods, postulates, and standards for what can constitute legitimate contributions to a field. I went to Wikipedia because, I think of a paradigm as really, if we look even 5 years ago at the paradigm shifts that happened as we moved to the all remote arena, it shifted the way we work. As there's been the return to office, there was more paradigms that were being straddled. Who knows what is ahead? But here's what's interesting. The word paradigm in Greek has its origin as pattern. So I love this graphic because part of our work, part of our competency base as coaches is to really help clients notice their patterns. We might also be playing a role of pattern interruption to help clients see, to help clients observe what is happening within their system. So think about that, right? This is a little sidebar, but I think from a practical coaching lens, what is happening around patterns in your world and in your conversations with clients? So I'd love to just hear from any of you, like in the chat, like, do you see paradigms and myths and maybe new realities being a focus? Is it not? Again, these are maybe hot topics, and you might be hearing this, seeing this in some industries, but not all industries. I think the new realities, as Steph even pointed us to with AI, right? All of you are being impacted by AI. That's part of a new paradigm shift. It may lead to a lot of things like how are we getting ourselves out of that lower threshold intellectual work into the more strategic work so that we are not so embedded in even things like accounting. I hope by this time next year that for small businesses, there might be an AI that reduces the amount of time for checking on taxes. I've been, I've been spending a lot of time just getting my materials ready for my accountant, not even doing the tax. I don't do that, but getting the materials. So, question for you. What do you see as paradigm shifts happening right now? What do you see as paradigm shifts? This is what Chat GPT came up with this morning. I always find it sort of funny, but not funny in terms of the spelling. Like I think that should be major cities on the left-hand side, digital truths, I'm not sure. Teams, national teams, and then the national teams show up again from this to that. So again, I don't know, but it's interesting when we think about paradigm shifts. I know for some of my clients right now, it is really about this whole, I think that the biggest one for many is this piece around the role of technology and how technology is changing workflows, it's changing team membership, it's changing the way people work. That would be maybe last week's topic. This week, still to be considered. But what are you seeing as paradigm shifts? Joe, thanks for putting up your hand because I can now see you.
Yeah, and I have to go after this, but I did a open, roundhouse table, and people were talking about one of the big paradigm shifts, at least the U.S., is like, what can you depend on in the government? Like, what's going to happen with the postal service? What's going to happen with tariffs? Yes, no, now yes again.
Mm.
So it's like all these things that people sort of expected of stability in the government are now no longer there, or even like getting a government job because it's a safe job. Now it's not in the US. So, yeah, so those are huge paradigm shifts here.
Huge. And each one of them that you list is a different one with different implications, with different levels of discernment. And so I love that you brought that to us, Joe, because I think very much, huge churn. And what is our role as coaches? How are we supporting that? How are we also, as I said at the start of the call, resourcing ourselves? Because these are big, big, big questions. So thanks, Joe. If you've got to drop off, just know we are recording. We'll probably go for about another 10 minutes. If anyone else has to drop off, sorry if you have to, but just know that we're back in 2 weeks for a drop into some of these. Shannon's saying a new reality equals serving underserved, undeserved, I think, underserved segments of the
Underserved.
thank you, underserved segments of the workforce while staying within government mandates. Yeah. As someone who worked in a international framework around funding for many, many years, it was always a challenge to make sure that we didn't fall into the trap of the flavor of the month or the flavor of the year, and that we could still do the work that mattered within the frameworks that whomever provided. But I think that is certainly another paradigm shift in reality where strong messages have been sent, and this is what we are going to focus on. It is having a cross-border ripple effect. Certainly, there are Canadian businesses that have been chastised perhaps because it is not in the Canadian values code to be letting go of things like we don't call it DEI per se, but really it's inclusivity. How do we ensure in our human rights code even that the people who deserve to have support are getting support? And so it's interesting with paradigm shifts that can lead to a lot of heated conversation. So one of the themes we'll talk about probably as we get into summer, but by all means, if you need more resources around this, it's about having the high heat, holding the space for high heat conversations. How do we as coaches, as facilitators, talk and hold the space and not get pulled into the direction of what our sort of mindset may be? It requires a lot of self-management, a lot of self-management. So just putting that on the table, and that's where the pause comes in. So we are going to be talking in the coming weeks around engagement, and engagement is much about the pause so that we can focus and figure out where we're going. So many of you may have seen me already share the Reconnecting Workspaces DICE sort of four-part model of the pause, the focus, the create, and activate. And in the Coaching and Change Day, we look at different ways that we can be working with those four arenas. Our next connection call will be getting into connection. So I'm not going to talk about it other than you've heard me probably talk about the 6 layers. Again, we've had a recent episode 13 of the Coaching Many podcast, I think was on the 6 layers of connection, but I want to add on an additional 6 layers: self-connection, team connection, cross-functional connection. So weakening the silos that exist in organizations, organizational connection around culture and alignment, and also industry connection and global connection. These are 6 areas that I'm writing about in the new Coaching and Change book. And I think it's important that we think about where are we on all of these different layers? Where does our work take us? Is it more on the self? Or, as I know in my work, it's really on the global. It's really that meta view of helping people connect the dots. If we do this here, what happens there, right? The world is linked in so many diverse ways. So Ivana says, if you want to learn more about these first 6 layers of connection, which is still very relevant in our group coaching conversations, our team coaching conversations, definitely check out episode 12 of the Coaching Many podcast. So as we come to the end, I want to put the sort of just a little marker for a couple of things where you're going to be seeing certainly my work continuing to take me. As most of you know, I started my career as an experiential educator. My vision loss 20 years ago, 23 years ago now, has really led me to work more in this virtual space. And for 23 years, I've really been sitting with the question of how do we create engaging experiences for people in the virtual realm? In the last year and a half, having had the opportunity to go back to where I used to work, and now with my vision, which is not better, but at least I can manage a little bit better perhaps than I could years ago, because our eyes do accommodate a bit. I'm really excited to be doing more and more around experiences, whether that's virtual experiences or intensive experiences, either here in Canada or throughout the Caribbean as we go forward. And I'm going to be doing a lot more around experience design. So there's a whole field that has been growing, just like design thinking, but there's experience design, UX, which you'll be seeing me doing more with and probably offering some training around as well as we move forward. We'll do a whole call on experiences that's coming up in, I can't read my own notes, so let's call it April, I think. And we will also come to a day around AI. So thanks to those that sort of spotlighted it now. Who knows where AI capability will be? We're getting close to singularity, which is a term used by the technocrats of AI and human thinking at the same speed. whole other layer of conversations there that we can get into dialogue around. So I'd love to hear from you. What was your big takeaway? I'm going to stop my share. Out of all of this, when you think about sitting down with your clients, what is the most important thing to be thinking about going forward? It's important to explore or maybe do more of or differently. Steph.
So a lot of people that I'm working with in my space have a lot of anxiety right now because of the chaos and the
Disruption.
disruption. Yeah, what is going on? Not only what just happened to them, but it's affecting the job market, and they have a lot of anxiety. So some of the things you mentioned are things I want to reflect on. How do I create that safe space? How do I create that pause for them? How I have opinions, right? Just like every other American. How do I can self-manage myself so that I provide that neutral, steady presence that they are so much needing right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's what came to my mind.
I love it. And thank you for spotlighting that word steady. Like really, we've got to do our own work. We've got to have our own conversations that are not our client conversations. So making sure that we have that space to work through whatever we need to work through. And Jane says, I really like these sessions as they open up my coaching world. Thank you. Well, thank you, Jane, for coming. And again, we know that it's a busy world, but we hope that you will be listening in live, like all of you. Thanks for contributing to the conversation or listening in asynchronously. So we'll be back in 2 weeks for this.
3 weeks.
3 weeks. Okay, 3 weeks.
So there's a
24th, right?
3 week gap for session 2, and then they go bi-weekly.
Okay, thank you. And Ivana always has my back on the details. So March the 24th will be back. And I think the first one is in fact connection, which is really important.
Yeah.
Anything you want to mention, Ivana, or spotlight? You've been great in sort of spotlighting all the podcasts. We know that that is a vehicle that a lot of people are enjoying because they can listen to it on the road, in the car, on the subway, wherever they are. Anything you want to mention?
There's also the link for that Heart of Coaching that I pulled off of Group Coaching Essentials. So if you want to go more deeper into the AI resources that Jen shares, there's that. I think for me in the conversation of today, I know we're going to be going deeper, but really that it was very thought provoking, the adaptive leadership. Quite honestly, it's the first time I've seen that body of work of yours. So I'm really leaning in on that and want to go back and circle back to that, but also the patterns. What are our, I love what Steph said. There's so many people who are coming in with anxiety through this chaos, through this disruption. What are our patterns when it comes to those types of spaces that people are coming into? And to me, it's the superpower, right? It's the activating our superpower and our range. And so what I want to just spotlight is we're in these coming weeks, we're going to be talking about that, but where are you? It's good to know where your strengths are, but where's your growth edge?
Yeah.
Especially important right now. And I say this because I need to hear this myself, by the way. Okay. I'm in Italy and all what's going on in Canada is activating me, but how can I stay present? How can I be grounded? How can I activate my range in Italy, especially when I'm trying to be agile to the world of what's going on in terms of my coaching programs? So I say that for you to think about, where are you and where's your agility? And pause is part of being able to know what that is and what that looks like. And so stay tuned. If you haven't followed the podcast, we've got episodes coming out on AI. We're covering these topics because especially Jen has a great pulse of what's going on in the world. And so we're bringing in and talking about it through these community calls, through the podcast. So stay tuned. And if you haven't joined our newsletter, I'll find the link somewhere. Actually, just go to Group Coaching Essentials and sign up at the bottom. Yeah. And that way you're abreast of what we're talking about, so you can be part of this conversation.
And I just spotlight it's groupcoachingessentials.ca is the site we've been
Thank
using
you.
for 5 years. The .com is old, and as with technology, again, we can only update as we go. So final wrap up, DNA, experimentation, and working across time zones came up as the dice of the day. I just want you to think about what is in your DNA. What do you want to be spotlighting? Where do you want to be experimenting? I'll see if I can put my finger on the experiment one. And just know that this experiment, as I said at the start of the call, that has been one of our annual dice for 2 years now, which I think is really sort of an interesting piece. And then working across time zones. As we really talked today about global issues, it doesn't matter where we sit in the world. Many of these are facing all of us as human beings. So with that, thanks everyone. We'll see you for our next call in 3 weeks on the 24th. Have a good day. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.